In this episode of the podcast, we're talking to a divorce lawyer, my divorce lawyer, Lauren Mullee. Now, Lauren has specialized in family law, where she has an incredible amount of experience. I'm absolutely stoked to bring her into the studio to have this conversation. It's one that I've wanted to have for quite some time because I wanted to get her take on the experiences that she has, kind of as this in-between person who helps couples to kind of navigate their relationship, whether they want to stay together, whether they want to divorce, and what are the most common reasons for landing at that divorce scenario. We're going to get a whole bunch from her experiences, so let's go ahead and jump into the episode. This is the TSS Podcast. It's a place for authentic conversations to uncover the stupid, simple truths that help us succeed in business, create better relationships, and lead more fulfilling lives. Welcome to Think Stupid Simple. Lauren, we begin, I don't know whether to go over or under, but we begin with the lighting of a candle. Apparently one of my wicks is low. That, you know what? Let's save that piece of Lauren singing because we're going to put that over every episode from now on.
Into the unknown. Sorry. I love kids' movies.
I do too. I am stoked to have you in the studio, my friend. Thank you for coming in.
Pi, it's such a pleasure to see you. This is so much fun. I really appreciate you thinking of me. Really, really flattered. It's going to be a lot of fun here today.
Yeah. So my thing is, well, I don't even know if I, at this point, have already introduced you, but I don't know that I've introduced you personally yet. So I should say that you are my divorce lawyer.
Dun! The truth comes out. Yes, proudly so. It was such a pleasure working with you. So happy we were able to, move forward in such a positive way. And you've been, just from the first day I met you, it was such a pleasure. So I'm really excited to kind of come full circle and get to see here in this gorgeous studio a little bit about what you do, and happy to be part of this.
Yes. I know.
No return business.
Lauren's like, it was a pleasure. And I'm like, yeah.
Not the word I would use. It's so funny because I think of myself as a nice person, and I like people. And so I always joke with people, like, I know no one ever wants to call me, wants to see me. Like, I'm like the reaper, And I don't think of myself that way, but I realize obviously there's so many dimensions. But from my perspective, with, like some of us have to deal with negative things or hard things in our jobs, like, a cancer surgeon or, any number of different kinds of professions. From my perspective, you as a person, helping you has been a pleasure.
No, 100%.
Though it wasn't a pleasurable activity as a whole.
100%. I mean, I would definitely say, like, my experience in working with you was wonderful. The subject we were working on sucks.
Correct. No bueno.
Yeah.
But you're awesome, and I'm so happy to be, on the side of things and moving forward, onward and upward.
Well, this is what you helped to protect and preserve, and so I am forever grateful for that. But I kind of want to start this. Our rough title that I'm kind of thinking of for this episode is really revolving around, what are the things that lead to divorce?
Sure.
What do healthy relationships look like? What are some of your experiences that you see? But before we get to that, what made you choose this profession?
I wish I had such a better answer for you that's exciting and tells exciting stories. Frankly, Pi, I was a student all my life, right? So we're born and we move forward step by step. Mm-hmm. No attorneys in my family, no real work role models, so to speak. I was raised by an artist.
Okay.
So never saw someone go to a job, never saw someone actually work.
Okay.
In so much as
in the traditional 9 to 5 sense.
Correct. No one ever went to an office. There were no paychecks, things like that. So I was good at school and just kind of kept cruising along with it. My boyfriend at the time, now husband, in college encouraged me. He said, you should look at going to law school. You like to speak, you like public speaking, you're good at, English and writing and things like that. Why don't you go to law school? So I took the LSAT and went to law school. I went to the University of San Diego, really pretty school up on the hill kind of overlooking Mission Bay in San Diego.
Yeah.
Loved it. And really at that stage in my life, after having done school, and more school, I'm sure some of your listeners can understand. It's like, when do I actually get to do the thing I'm preparing for? Like, it takes so long to get there, right?
Going through law school is what you have your undergrad and then you have basically
Yeah.
an additional 3-4 years.
Correct. So and I did 4.5 years undergrad at the University of Arizona, double major, triple minor, because that's just how we go.
Double major,
triple minor. Yep.
What were your majors and minors?
I hope I'm not really boring the listeners.
Not at all. I find this fascinating. This is for me.
There's this random girl coming in here in a green dress talking about 85 majors. So my majors were econ and regional development, which is like geography.
Okay.
Yeah, I almost went
I didn't know that was even a thing.
I know.
Major in
geography.
Geography.
Yeah, I loved it. It was so much fun. I was looking to become a city planner. I was looking to go into like city planning, environmental planning. Like kind of, you could go on the dark side and work for like an oil company, which I wouldn't do, or you could you could work for like Greenpeace. No jobs there. So it was environmental planning, environmental like resource management kind of stuff was where I was going. But again, my boyfriend, now husband, encouraged me. Hey, maybe there's more upward mobility and opportunity with an advanced degree. And I said, yeah, well, I have good grades and I'm, sure, cool, let's do it. So,
your mind goes a million miles an hour.
That's why we get along, homeboy. The minors, you'll love the minors. So econ and regional development. I always called econ my serious major. Regional development was my fun major. We would I was at U of A, Tucson. So we would drive around at 5 a.m. and get like soil samples and like temperature gradients. It was like kind of like a soft science, real fun, like sciencey enough to like sound smart, but not so smart that you like are in physics or whatever, So, and then my 3 minors you'll love: sociology, Spanish, and religious studies. I mean,
we're going to have a blast right now.
Can we really be any more random than Lauren Mullee? It's not possible.
I'm attempting to learn Spanish. I love studying religion and sociology. Yes, please.
I know, it's fun stuff. I really I have this thing, Pi, where I just want to embrace I don't want to sound trite. We only have one time around on this earth, but it's true. I only have one life to live, and I don't want to do it in kind of a piddly manner. I want to really embrace things. So I started out at, we're going way too far back. Sorry. Started out at a small school in Chicago. Too small. It was a very religious based school called Wheaton College. It was just really, really small.
I know Wheaton.
You know Wheaton?
Yeah.
I have lifelong friends, great people, too cold, too small.
Yeah.
So I transferred to the literal polar, no pun intended, opposite, the University of Arizona.
Yeah, U of A is kind of like a party school, isn't it?
People say that, but going there's so many really smart people and really diverse majors, i.e. regional development.
I.e. driving around picking up soil samples.
Hey, why not? Why not? It was fun. So anyway, it was a really cool opportunity just to explore different sides of myself.
Yeah.
And I wanted to major in Spanish, but I wasn't good enough. And I just, again, I wanted things, I was starting to get to a place in my life, Pi, where I don't know if your listeners can relate to this. It's like, okay, I can read, I can study, I can make flashcards, I can get an A on a test.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to do, I want to be able to give, I want a skill. And frankly, that really leads me to the answer to your question in my long-winded roundabout manner, which is family law, divorce law, call it what you want. I have a skill.
Yeah.
It's a weird skill. It's an odd skill. It's a skill that kind of comes out of left field. Like it's not, pottery or, writing symphonies, but I have a real tangible skill that, as opposed to, opining on theoretical First Amendment rights, nothing wrong with that. I get to say, okay, house, car, retirement account, pension, income, children, custody, all those pieces. That's somebody's life.
Yeah.
And I have this funky skill where I'm able to receive a person who is often crying, angry. I keep a lot of Kleenex on my desk, right? Because they're going through the hardest thing in their life.
Yeah.
And I have this skill where I get to take that situation, that ball of wax, and I get to make it into something beautiful.
Yeah.
And that might sound funny, but truly, as my website reflects, the passionate pursuit of your new beginning is sort of my theme and my tagline. There's something beautiful about taking a situation, again, maybe their businesses are intertwined. Maybe there's a lot of acrimony. Maybe there's, unfortunately, domestic violence. There's all kinds of different things that will come in that package that's handed to me by the person sitting across the desk from me, who's nervous and concerned and never talked to an attorney before. And I get to take that thing and take the theory and take the fear and take the unknowns and create a new beginning.
Yeah.
That's what I do. So all my funny little anecdotes and weird little majors and traveling all over the United States to pursue, I guess, 15 life 15 lives. What's the word I'm looking for? 15 experiences of life in one. I now have this thing, this skill set where I can take uncertainty. Not that I'm a magician, because I'm not. I have, a toolbox, which is the law and procedure and strategy and caring. Those are the things in my toolbox, in addition to just some common sense that sometimes needs to kind of be inserted into a situation. And I get to take that and help someone down the path, a journey to something new and frankly, often even better than what they had before.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, Pi. So often, I wish that I could have some of my former clients in my office as like the Greek chorus singing to new folks that I meet with. There will be hope.
Yeah.
It will get better. It may even be better than it was, because it's true. There is life on the other side when you go through a breakup, whether that's a divorce or, the ending of a non-marital cohabitation type relationship, which we can talk about later in this podcast as well, because I specialize in both. But yeah, that's the answer. Is I was really, after all my kind of searching and all my, and I have diverse interests. But all that being said, in terms of a career, I was yearning for the ability to actually do something.
Yeah.
And family law, for better or for worse, has provided me with that opportunity.
That's really interesting, because I do feel like in general, the university experience kind of leaves out the practical application of what you're learning. It's one of my biggest issues that I've actually talked about a bit on the podcast, is I don't feel like university, anything up through your schooling, really prepares you for the actuality of doing that thing. Whether you're studying photography, whether you're studying, history, whether you're studying whatever it is, once you hit the ground running. I was an auditor, and I remember studying accounting and then going and getting a job. I felt like my accounting degree didn't prepare me one bit for the actual job itself. So I understand that wanting to develop that skill set that you could actually put to use. Granted, you could have done that in several different ways. And I'm curious, was there something compelling? Was there some experience that you had personally that made you realize you have a perspective on this, on particularly the subject of breakups and divorce, that is unique, in the sense of you're trying to piece back together a life and put people on something that's going to be genuinely better for them. And I'm very curious if that perspective came from your own experiences, things that you've seen, anything like that, because you could have gone into contract law, you could have gone any other realm. So we're there.
Yeah, I'm very, very blessed. I'm married to a wonderful, wonderful man. Have been for 14, 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah, we met when we were, thanks. We met when we were in high school. Didn't go to the same high school, but met through a mutual friend here in Orange County. So, it's not, my partner's awesome and gives me really great insights on things from a very, very different perspective. But going into the field of family law it's not personal in that way. It has developed into something very personal, but I didn't get into it from a personal place. And you're absolutely right. Many of my colleagues, they went through a divorce. Their parents went through a nasty divorce. They've
seen something.
Correct. They had a catalyst in their own life that caused them to want to go down. You're 100% correct. With me, it's kind of like this. I don't watch Law and Order. I don't watch TV shows about law. People say, "Oh, The Good Wife." You need to. Never, won't do it, because for me, it's sort of like I'm a compartmentalizer in some ways. I want my work to be the best.
Yeah.
Excellence, perfect. I shouldn't say those words. Oh, knock on wood. I'm going to mess them up now. I want my vocational and work life is its own thing, separate and apart from my personal life. And that's something I do on purpose, and I'm not perfect at it, honey, because there will be times when I wake up on a Saturday morning worrying about a client. Don't act like you don't know. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this. So getting into family law was more, it was more of a practical, like I described before, experience, not so much generated by my own personal emotional past or experiences. But I'll say this, early on in my practice, because I have done other areas of law. I haven't only done family law. I have done contract law. I have done personal injury, wrongful death cases, big, crazy cases. So I've done other stuff, medical malpractice. But early on, when I was kind of doing both, family law and these other areas. I remember my supervising attorney at that time had me handle a hearing for this particular woman. I can picture her perfectly. I'll use a fake name to protect the innocent. Jane, we'll call her Jane. And in Jane's instance, unfortunately, Jane was a high-earning woman, lovely woman, very bright, had a very young baby, young daughter. Unfortunately, Jane had made a mistake, and she had chosen to drink alcohol, which there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but she drank to excess, and then husband, unfortunately, baited her into an altercation. As a result, he was filming the whole thing. It was all very strategic and planned. He then filed for domestic violence restraining orders and got her child taken away.
Oh, wow.
She had been the primary parent. It was a baby. I think the child was like 9 months, real young. And in the course of doing so, mom then went from being, with her baby all the time to having, I think it was 2 hours, 2 hour monitored visits on Saturday.
Wow.
So she would be in a room in a public place with a cop watching her. To
That's
see her
crazy.
baby. Oh, yes. So this is the case. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah.
My supervising attorney threw me into. Fine. No, and I loved her, and I was very passionate about her case. So I'll never forget, Pi, to your point, in terms of kind of how this has grown into something that comes from my heart, where it maybe started in my mind. And it's still there too, I hope, from time to time. But I went into this hearing. I'll never forget it. I was it was probably my second year of practice or so. And I'll never forget, I'd briefed the issues really thoroughly. We had prepped for the hearing. My client, Jane, is standing next to me. And the court he said, I've read all the paperwork. And I think Dad was appearing by a telephone. He wasn't in the room. But Dad and his attorney were on the phone. And the court said, I read the paperwork, Judge Millard. And I find that there's no reason for any more monitor. I find that mom has sufficiently met all the requirements necessary. And I find that she should now have primary custody and Dad will have every other weekend. And he scolded Dad in this scenario. Now, remember, my client was drunk. Mm-hmm. But he said, Dad, you were dead wrong. In that altercation that you engaged in, you were sitting there holding up a phone. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't have been filming. You should have been taking the child, making sure the child was safe. Don't worry, sweetheart, everything's fine. You should have been diffusing the situation, Dad. But no, you were amping it up. You were trying to create a situation. I find that is way worse than mom's choice to drink a little too much that night.
Yeah.
So the child was taken away from Dad, returned to my client. My client she reached over, she grabbed my hand and she started squeezing it. And I could feel the hand holding me. I could feel it like moving, and she was crying. I mean, she wasn't audibly crying, but I could feel the hand on my hand, like jerking and like heaving. And I'm trying to look at the judge, and I'm turning my eyes a little to look at her, and she's, just tears streaming down her face. I'll never forget it. And we left the courtroom after we got our orders and did all our administrative stuff. And she just looked at me with these eyes like, I don't know what to say. Lauren, there's no words I can say to thank you.
Yeah. I mean, that's life-changing, that result.
And ever since then, I've been like, that's always stuck with me as like, what I'm doing is I'm helping people move forward. All that stuff I said already, but it's also, it's like the deepest, most important thing in some cases. I can take a stranger that I don't even know and I can give that to them.
Yeah. I like tying, people that are good at what they do and that truly enjoy it. It's very visible, like it is in your case. And I like tying those things back to the core values that drive them, which is why I ask these questions. And I'm going to make a guess here, an educated guess based on some of the things that you said. And you're going to tell me if it's right or wrong.
Let's do it.
Earlier, you mentioned briefly when you were saying the different opportunities that you can go into with geography was essentially, going to the dark side, which was working for the oil companies versus going to Greenpeace where there's really not any jobs. Yeah. But when you said that, it kind of made me think of something. When you referenced oil companies as the dark side, it very much felt like you have a sense of morality and purpose in the sense of what you do needs to be for a greater good and a cause. And as you went and you practiced in other areas of law, I'm curious I would guess that those other areas were not nearly as meaningful. Like whether you did contract law, whether you did whatever, at the end of the day, it's for a corporation, it's for a company, it's not really for any individual, and the tangible benefits, the difference making is not there. Whereas when you got that experience, you saw that your abilities, your skill set, your tools were actually very much possible to make an actual difference. I would argue that that's what you fell in love with. The ability to craft and make a difference in a person's life in a very tangible way, as opposed to other areas of law where what you're doing is more ambiguous. It's more helping a corporation generate money, save money, whatever it might be. Would that be a safe bet?
Well, I'm honored and flattered that you are so interested in helping me through this experience of talking with you here, develop my own sense of self. And I hope that the listeners...
It's more for me. but sure, if you're getting something
altruism.
from it, great.
No, I'm learning and growing as the words are coming out of my mouth and as the words from your mouth are falling on my ears. I think that's so true. And it's funny, in the day-to-day grind that we all, listeners included, experience, sometimes the greater philosophical or the greater, empirical truths in our life kind of get shoved under, doing the laundry and like answering the emails, right? So this is a really cool opportunity for me and hopefully for your listeners as well to kind of maybe take a moment, a TO, and take stock. The answer is yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'd never maybe articulated or put into those kinds of words as you just so aptly stated. But yes, I don't care to make, I'm going to be really blunt. I don't care to make some like corporation richer. Like, I don't care about that. I don't care about like, that doesn't like, I don't care about just pushing papers around to like, okay, when's it going to be 5 PM? When's it going to be like, that's not like, are you serious? Like I have one time around this earth. I'm not wasting it on just doing like meaninglessness. I do have people in my life that I observe and I chat with. And when I hear about what they do for a living, what you do for a living isn't your whole life.
Sure.
You can have charities you volunteer with, activities you enjoy. You can be learning a language like you are doing. But other people in other areas, and it's not like I'm better than someone, not at all. But I think to myself, how dull to sit there and I'll find myself saying, like my husband will be like, oh, so-and-so got a new job doing, X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I'll say, that sounds dull. And that sounds very rude. And I don't mean to be snotty, but like, I have to be honest with you, Pi, like, what's the freaking point?
Yeah.
When you're not like, and again, family law, it's high highs and low lows, right? It's not like every day of my life is what I described a moment ago where I've got clients sobbing for joy.
Oh, for sure.
But it happens.
Yeah.
Like I had 2 Fridays ago, I had 2 clients in tears with thanks.
Yeah.
Because I made a big difference for them in very, very different ways than I described a moment ago with that other example. But the point is, absolutely, I don't see why I'm going to spend so much time and energy. I've got my certified family law specialist designation that I obtained earlier late last year. That's a special certification. Probably, I think less than 1% of family law attorneys have it through the state bar. I would not be going through all this time and trouble and hard work, constantly researching, constantly learning about new laws, attending seminars. If it didn't result in something positive, who cares?
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. But yes, the answer is absolutely yes, without being overly long-winded, which is already, something I'm dealing with here because I have so much to say and this is so much fun because why not? But yes, I think that making a difference, that phrase has become very trite and sort of thrown around in such a way that it's like, oh, I'm making a difference. I'm, donating $1 to Ronald McDonald House. Like, cool. Like, that's great. So I want to reinvigorate that phrase with a little more power when I speak right now to say, yes, I think that we can all in our sphere do something every day that does help somebody or something, whether it's animal rights, the environment, whatever, like all that stuff's awesome. It doesn't have to be a human being. My work happens to be human beings, which is it's fine. We can all do something to, and I can't think of anything other than the trite phrase, make this world a better place. But it's true. We all can do something. And I'm very, very fortunate that I've been blessed with a career where I get to do that every single day.
Yeah. Well, everybody has their own sets of motives, right? I mean, there are people that are intrinsically motivated by cash and capital, and they they are willing to do any job and whatever it takes to be able to earn that. And that is the piece that they value, seeing $100,000 paycheck, seeing, those kind of things come through is what drives and motivates them, because they want to live this life that they have in their minds. And there are people that are very much driven by a different set. And the way that you speak, it reminded me of that set, which is similar to the way that I think. When I first got into photography, it was falling in love with showing somebody my version of what I see in them, and seeing like, okay, people that don't think they're necessarily strong or attractive or beautiful or all these different things. It was my opportunity to show them through an artistic eye, like how I see them. And you could see their lives transform through that. And then after doing that for a period, I realized, now I want to empower more people. I don't want it just to be the other person on the side of this lens. So I started teaching photographers how to do the same thing. And then seeing those photographers go out and become successful and do the same things for their clients. And I'm now affecting hundreds of thousands of lives. And then it became down the road now where I'm sitting here going, this is great, but it's not enough. Like, I want to empower everybody to do more with their lives, and that's what led me to creating the podcast, writing the book, but it's realizing that my core value comes from empowerment. It comes from basically helping others to achieve things that they couldn't have done prior, or that they felt like they couldn't have done prior. And I look at money as the byproduct of that function. Like, to me, money is this it's an energy form. Like when I go and I make $100,000, $200,000, whatever it might be, what I'm controlling is a form of other people's energy. I get to come to Lauren and say, Lauren, now I'm exchanging my energy, what I've earned, for your time and energy in going in and doing this service. And it's helped a lot. I'll tell you, it especially helped me through the process of divorce, because I zeroed out, and it was like there was nothing left. And this. And so you fortunately helped me to preserve my company. And that's basically what I walked away with. And the arguments that we brought to the table were like, the company is what pays for the alimony and the child support and all these other things.
Absolutely.
Let him continue doing this. Mm-hmm. So basically I walked away with nothing except for the company. And my thought was, look, money is energy. If I have more emotional capacity, more energy to do my job, to do my work, the money will come back. And it has. And so looking and having that relationship with money as a byproduct makes it so I don't base my decisions around it, if that makes sense. I base my decisions on what my values are, and I allow the money piece to kind of come as it happens.
I think that's really beautiful. I'm going through similar experiences as a new business owner, which we'll talk about more in a minute, I'm sure, in terms of managing money in a different way, which is so exciting. And I actually really love to be a business person. But I want to touch on something that you're speaking truth to me, and I want to do the same for you. And it's something I wanted to talk about as well in the bigger picture. It might be interesting if we all, the listeners included, reflect on the fact that what Pi actually just said, I don't know if anyone else caught this. What Pi just said is, I'm so passionate about empowering others that I'm going to develop my competition. Right?
Basically.
You are going to, do you see, that was such a clear message to me. Pi is saying, I love learning about photography. I love teaching it. I love teaching people the bigger picture of what it does for the client. And I love educating and imparting my experiences to others. And obviously you're really good at it because there are people who are interested in your services. But isn't that interesting? Because some people who are maybe, I don't know, for example, maybe less secure in their skills, less, maybe more focused on clutching the money or clutching, a perception of, I don't know, power or influence, would be much more cagey. Oh, I'm not going to share. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to empower because I want to keep this all for myself. But isn't that interesting? I think that speaks volumes about you, Pi. And I think that's something we could all reflect on in our own lives. Somebody who says, it's more important to me to share my gift than it is for me to hoard my gift and clutch it close and try and keep it all for myself, which the competition is going to be there.
Yeah.
It's not like you not pursuing your dream is going to all of a sudden make the competition, go away. And the only photographers in the world are going to be Lynn and Jersa. Clearly not. But I just think that's so beautiful and speaks so much to your driving values that you're saying, I'm not afraid of competition. And this is what I always say to people, Pi. If you're good at what you do, competition is never a problem because there literally are enough seats at the table for everybody.
Yeah.
There's enough people that need photography. There's enough, unfortunately, people that need a divorce attorney. We don't have to clutch and hold close and be insular.
Sure.
We can share and spread the love, if you will, spread knowledge, spread wisdom, spread who we are as a person. I walked by a department store the other day, and there was a shirt in the window, and it says, "Just be you. That's the answer." No, it said, "Just be more you." That's the answer to the question.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, I like that.
And personally for me, developing my own new business here that I started back in November, and it's thrown around a lot also, but authenticity, being authentic to yourself, has been so key. And I just love the authenticity of what you just shared, to say, I love to teach, I love to share. I would love to share, hear competition, hear other people who would, theoretically vie for a client. Here's the skills. Go for it.
That's
because
funny.
guess what? You're you, I'm me. Pi's going to be the right fit for somebody, and Joe Schmo is going to be the right fit for someone else. Great. There's lots of business out there. What's there to be afraid of?
That's a very interesting way of putting it. I've never put it that way before, and I have been asked the question many, many times. That's one of the things that students ask a lot is, aren't you afraid that you're training the competition? And I'm like, no. But you're right that, most of the things that I'm doing is basically training other people to be able to compete with me. That's never the way that I've looked at it, though. I've always looked at it as the sense of if I personally can help, let's say 30 wedding clients in a year or 30 portrait clients or whatever, my time is limited, right? But if then I can help 30 other photographers to do the same thing with their 30 clients, then now I've affected 900 people's lives. Now we're at the place where, I get to help educate about 700,000 photographers around the world on a regular basis. And now the 30 people that I originally set out to, in a year, I could only affect 30 people's lives. Now in a year, I can affect somewhere around the neighborhood of 20 million lives.
It's crazy.
And then going broader. And when you think of money as the energy form, the more lives you're affecting, the more energy comes and is returned to you. So that's kind of the way that I try to teach people to think of money is what you're currently doing is great. But if you look at teaching, or if you look at empowering as competition, which many, many people do, so many photographers want to protect their secrets. Writers are the same. I've learned this to the nth degree in the publishing world. It's even worse.
Oh, really?
It's gnarly.
It's
People
gnarly.
protect every bit of their connections. People that are like friends, already existing friends, won't make introductions because they feel like you're competing with me. And when you limit, the number of people that you're going to affect, then you limit the amount of income that you can generate. You limit the energy, right? Mm-hmm. So when I think of it from that standpoint, whatever job you're doing, maybe you're at McDonald's and you have the ability to serve 100 people a day. That's your ability in your window of that job. But then when you're a manager and you're running the team, then you have the ability to affect 1,000 people's service each day. And then when you own a McDonald's, it's completely different. And then when you own 5 of them. So it's just a different way of looking at it as energy versus like a competitive kind of look on it. But you're right. There's enough for everybody.
There really is. It's almost like if you take your hand and clutch it and then you release, there's something freeing about releasing fear, which is a process I had to go through when I started my business, releasing, what ifs, anxiety, any of those things. Like, you know what? It's going to be okay. Release. It's something new. It's okay. And ironically, isn't that what I tell my own clients?
Yeah.
They say, what do they say? Do what I say, not what I do.
Yeah.
That's what I tell my own clients. Move forward, release. Let's not be fearful. Let's go for it. Let's be assertive. Let's move. Let's do it in the right time for them. And then I had to, kind of give myself the little same sermon, the same talk. Okay, girlfriend, it's your turn. Practice what you preach.
Well, what's crazy is something you can share with your clients is, from my perspective, it took me 7 years to get to the financial position I was in before the divorce. It took me 3 years to get to 5 times where I was at the time of that divorce.
Wow.
So to me, that's the ultimate equation of like, what is your emotional energy worth?
Wow.
7 years to get to one place. It was less than a year to get back to that place. And in 3 years, I had 5 times it. And it was like, okay, that's what I was losing. That's what was on the table during the entire time. And it's not just financial position, it's happiness, it's everything else. But being in that place, it's wild. I can't tell you, from when I was going through the process and just in it, I was producing maybe 1 or 2 courses a year. I was shooting with my clients. Coming through the other side, I'm doing 8 to 10 courses a year. I'm working with more clients. I'm doing 2 to 3 shoots a week, and I'm spending more time with my family than I'd ever done before.
It's so awesome.
It's a very weird thing, because you're right that when you are in the midst of it, it's dark.
It's dark.
It's very dark, and seeing the other side of where it can go is, I think, incredibly important, but it's difficult.
And that's part of the process, is going through that dark time, because it's sort of like the analogy of the seed that gets planted in the dark, underneath the soil.
Yeah.
And it's dark and you don't see any flowers or roots or anything going on. And it takes time to there's almost like a process. I believe that I see people, and I experience in my own life, where we sometimes have to go through that dark time. Maybe it's to appreciate the good time. Maybe it's to really have the energy saved up to really be passionate to make that good time happen. I don't know the chicken or the egg on that subject, but there's something I think to be said sometimes about, not that I'm happy that you had a dark time. I'm not happy about that at all, but I'm happy that to the extent that gave birth or allowed for the opportunity to see the growth that came thereafter.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have every nuanced detail of how that works, but I just know it does. That sometimes we learn from adversity. We grow in those times. If for no other reason we say, ew, I don't like this, get me out of here. And it gives you the impetus to want to grow. Mm-hmm. And then to your point about having a different energy expenditure in your life, which makes me so happy to hear that after the process was over for you, that for any number of reasons, none of which we need to get into detail about, your overall ability, mental, physical, capacity, it sounds like just grew exponentially.
Oh, 100%.
And I'm so happy to hear that. That's so awesome. It
100%.
Makes me so gratified that affects all your wonderful employees, your kids, all these wonderful things are coming from it. And it started out as this little seed germinating under the dirt.
Yeah.
It grew to this beautiful tree that continues to expand.
That's the tough piece of it, is you have to acknowledge that. Like, I have to acknowledge that no matter what my marriage was, no matter how difficult it was or what that experience was, it is what set me up to go the opposite way. Like, so in a way, like, I have to be thankful for, like, it's not something that I would wish on anybody, not my own children, not anybody. But at the same time, it's difficult because it's that experience that led me to be able to do what I do. In the past 3-something years since the divorce, while doing everything else, that's when I wrote the book.
Yes.
Like, from that point forward.
Exactly.
So it's a weird thing. Now, I do want to pull up, Anthony, can you pull up Lauren's new wonderful looking website? Because in this time, when I first met you, you were actually working with TCB?
The Buncher Law Corporation.
The Buncher Law Corporation.
Another firm. Yeah.
Okay. And then since then, what was it, 6 months ago, a year ago?
It was back in November. So it was about almost, we're on month 5 right now. Month 5 as it's March 2021 now.
So now we have LaurenMulleeLaw.com.
Yes,
your
sir.
own practice now.
I'm very proud. I'm super excited. And I loved developing this website. It was such a fun exercise in creativity. And, this isn't meant to be a slam on anybody, but I'm just sitting here in this podcast and I'll say what I want, hon. Most law firm websites are very imposing, formal.
Yes.
They're not welcoming and warm.
No.
When I meet with somebody, they're going through the hardest time in their life.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that every aspect, from the first phone call they have with my amazing paralegal Katie to meeting with me, etc., I want to make sure every experience is something where they feel drawn into a warm and welcoming environment.
Yeah.
So that was my goal with my website. I love bright colors. I love tropical things. I love Hawaii and tropical places. So I loved utilizing and engaging with some sort of floral and leaf-like patterns developed actually after a photo I took on my honeymoon, but that's another subject. some of these images, but that I really enjoyed doing the colors and all aspects of it. It's just really was a very passionate thing right from my heart.
I love it.
To express myself. Yeah. So thank you. I hope that it speaks well to people who are considering going through having a divorce situation, or maybe who weren't married but had a long-term relationship with a partner. I can assist those folks as well, whether kids or no kids. And I even have I need to tell you, Pi, if you go, if Anthony goes to How We Work, and then scrolls down, I have this exciting new practice area.
I know what you're talking about.
Divorce.
The pre-divorce.
Yeah,
yes.
anti-divorce coaching.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
Oh, good. So yes, right there. So divorce prevention coaching or anti-divorce coaching. This is a new area. And Anthony, scroll down on the How We Work page. You're doing perfect, Anthony. Thank you. You're the bomb.com. Sorry, 2001 reference there. But so my divorce prevention coaching is a new area that I just developed kind of out of seeing the need for it, Pi.
Yeah.
I've never heard of, I'm sure there's someone else out there that does it, but I've never heard of it. But I just kept seeing people who would come into saying, I want a divorce. And I say, okay, no worries. Let's talk about it. Let's go through all the issues. Let's analyze it together. Let's go through it. And so often people came in wanting something they knew nothing about.
Yeah.
Right? I want this thing. I see horror stories on, Entertainment Tonight and Us Weekly about celebrity divorces and crazy things. By the way, much of which is reported dead wrong, but that's dead wrong. Wrong.
I always assume it's always reported dead wrong.
Please do. You're doing yourself a favor and not stressing up overnights about, how all that works. How is it that Brad and Angelina's divorce is still going on because they're actually technically divorced? I can explain all that. It's actually not that hard and it happens all the time, but cool. Us Weekly. Go for the gold and get that money, girl. But anyway, so with the divorce prevention coaching, I developed this out of seeing people come to me who demand, or not demand, but they say, I want something, and then saying, so what do I want?
Yeah.
Let me explain. So, right. They don't, people come in, and it's no offense, I'm not mad at them. They're, an electrical engineer or a teacher or a police officer or whatever they are. They don't know family law, but they come in saying, I want something, and then they say, tell me about what the thing it is that I want. It's kind of backwards.
It is. I mean, people don't generally have a good idea of what divorce is. I mean, in reality, you think that I know of one instance out of so many where a divorce was actually two people just going and just undoing it and them figuring it out on their own. I know of one example of that. In every other case, it's very messy. I don't think people understand the financial realities of what it's like to actually be on your own, to be having the kids by yourself, to be, there's a lot of those pieces. So when I saw this, I was like, I didn't know if it was new or not, but I was like, that's definitely something that would be very valuable, because in so many cases, I would imagine that once somebody sits down at the table and sees what are the realities of this, they might go, okay, this is an option, but this is the nuclear option. And this is where I'm going to go. Let me go try every other option and see if there's better ways of maybe we can get to a happy place. Maybe we can put in the other effort. And if not, then this is on the table. But I always kind of, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I always say divorce is very much like taking a wrecking ball to a building. Sometimes a building is so decrepit and so dysfunctional that you have to remove it and start from the foundation up. In most cases, though, renovation fixes a lot of things. In most cases, renovation can completely restore a building. So I kind of look at it that way. And for everybody that's asked me, that's the analogy that I say is you're looking at the mess of destroying the building, cleaning up the wreckage, going and removing the foundation, and then starting anew.
That is such a good analogy. I 100% agree, and I will steal that and use it going forward as mine. And I will say TM, patent pending, Kai Jirsa. Literally, that is such a good. It's a 100% correct, and certainly to the extent that divorce prevention coaching, perhaps coupled with counseling, therapy, which I wholeheartedly agree with and believe in and encourage where possible, that those tools and others could be used to try and approach it from a renovation standpoint, as opposed to the wrecking ball to the building standpoint, if it can. And often I want to remind people, like, who meet with me, I'm not trying to tell anyone to get divorced.
Yeah.
If a relationship or a marriage can be saved and can be renewed, of course I want that. I think there's sometimes, and unfortunately maybe some of my compatriots might give a different impression, where they maybe fan the flames and try to, go get that jerk and this and that and the other. Not me, honey. No, I want people to repair relationships if they can, of course. And so this is where my divorce prevention coaching services kind of is my sort of attempt at that, to say, okay, you think maybe there's a challenge in the relationship right now. And that I'm sorry to hear that. Let's talk the process through, so people have a confidential, private, but area of a private place to go, but that's not their neighbor, the internet, their friend who don't understand the law. Maybe they went through a divorce too, but every situation is different, and it's really dangerous to take your friend's divorce or your neighbor's divorce and try to analogize it that should fit perfectly into your situation.
Yeah.
They're not the same.
Yeah. Even
to the point, but this is going to sound a little silly, who your judges can make a difference. That sounds crazy, but it's just the truth. I can only report the truth. So divorce prevention coaching is something I'm really excited about. It's a great way for people to get the information they need to make the right choice.
Yeah.
Eyes wide open. That's what I always tell people. I'm going to help you. You, after these sessions with me, you will go in eyes wide open, knowing exactly what to expect. And then if that's to your point, Pi, if that's the right choice for you, if the wrecking ball is the right choice for you, well, the state of California allows that. All you have to do is check a box that says irreconcilable differences, and you will get divorced if you want. Sure, go ahead. But before we go to that point, in addition to the emotional journey, in addition to the, maybe psychological journey, let's talk about, to your point, the legal and financial journey.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it, because I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you exactly how it works. And it's all confidential. No one needs to know that you're, consulting with an attorney. And then you can have the tools to say, Lauren made some good points. I'm really going to think long and hard, because I realize that I'm going to have to share my retirement account. For example, this is just an example, or whatever the case might be, in this certain way, or I realize that, he or she is going to be entitled to spousal support. And financially, I think that's going to be a real challenge, compared to whatever. So they can weigh their options in a more quantitative manner.
Well, what was fascinating to me was the realities of, and I learned this from research before coming to you, and then you helped me to realize just how much of an impact that would be. But the realities of a person who is employed versus self-employed or has their own business is so incredibly different.
It's so different.
You can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm going to ballpark it. If you make $100,000 at a job, and you go into the divorce process, alimony and everything is imputed based on $100,000. But if you go in with $100,000 of income and you also own business, well, the property of the business is also a marital asset.
Correct.
So you not only have to pay based on income, but then you also have to actually figure out, how am I going to purchase back the interest from this other person? And that other person may not have spent a day in the business. It doesn't matter.
Bonbons on the couch the entire time. It's a community business. The law doesn't care.
Yeah. And affair, anything, cheating, bonbons on the couch, it doesn't matter who the other person was. They own half of everything that you own.
If the business was started during the marriage.
If the business was started.
If you started the business prior to marriage, there's still going to be the community, and this is California law, folks. So if you live in another state, please consult your local divorce attorney. Woo, fun times, right? But in California, if the business was opened up prior to marriage, prior to DOM, date of marriage, then there's going to be it's a separate property business. But if the community during marriage, so starting from marriage forward, if the community, meaning either one or both spouses, contribute to that business and contribute to its value during the marriage, then the community, meaning the two spouses together, will start to gain an interest in that separate property business. So you can have an asset that's actually mixed character, both separate and community. There's a variety of ways to analyze that community interest, but we're not here to have a real dry lesson on all that. But there's ways we do that.
Yeah. That process is wild because you're essentially penalized for owning your own business.
Absolutely. It's terrible. I completely disagree with it. Moreover, to your point also, and this will really throw the listeners for a loop who are self-employed. So yeah, anyway, sorry, I'm only the messenger. Don't shoot me. But also self-employed persons, they're entitled to deduct reasonable business expenses from their incomes, as you and I experienced together. However, opposing side can seek to add back what they might consider to be, personal expenses. So of course, a self-employed person is usually motivated to,
write off everything they can.
You said it, not me.
The other person's going to say, that's not a write-off, that's income.
And they'll try to add it back. And so that's going to become a fight of the forensic accountants. Talk about boring, but it's true. Fight of the forensic accountants. And then a court's going to have to ultimately, if the parties can't agree, a judge is going to have to decide which forensic accountant they believe or slash the baby in the middle.
Fight of two $500 an hour forensic accountants.
It can be, yeah. So not only are you is spousal and child support addressed based on your actual, if a self-employed person pays themselves wages or whatever, or on self-employment income, but there's also the concern or fear that some of their deductions might be added back. Things like depreciation are always added back. There's certain categories that are always added back to income that are proper for IRS purposes, but not proper for family law purposes. And then thirdly, to your point, there's the business as a marital asset that then needs to be divided just like a bank account or a car or a house or whatever the case might be. It's a lot, Pi. It's a lot. And I really, really feel for my clients. And that's part of why I really feel so strongly about communication with my clients and making sure they know and are empowered to make the best decision that they can for themselves. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's one of those cases where the pain of staying has to be more than the pain of leaving the thing. And in too many cases, people make the decision to leave without understanding the pain of what's to come. And I do think that in many cases, people also make the decision without even properly understanding or trying to resolve what's going on. But yeah, it was a fascinating process to me. It was also interesting to see how the law takes no stance or bias as to the realities of the relationship. That was brutal to me. It was one of those things that I had to personally you just got to get over. And once again, thinking of everything as just being energy. Money is energy. Emotional happiness is energy. Everything comes from this. If I can preserve that, then it's worth more than anything. That's what got me through the whole process, because I looked at it as just all I'm doing is buying my energy back. I'm figuring out a way to preserve and create more of that. But it was wild. It was wild to see, I remember calling and asking you several questions of if I can demonstrate this, if I can show this, if it's this case, if this is what happened, does anything change? And you were like, no.
Sorry. And I hate having to be the bearer of bad news sometimes, because your points that you made to me were very meritorious and very, you had obviously thought them through, and they were very logical. The comments being made to me were not crazy comments, but I have to sometimes report what our lovely California legislature has put into law, right? Yeah. Which is what it is, which is California is a no-fault state. And for the vast majority of the time, the court really doesn't care about some of those whys and the reasons that things happened. And some of those equities, even though family court is called a court of equity, where, in other words, the court is supposed to be taking into account what's fair, they kind of don't, because they are busy, overburdened, underpaid, understaffed, and just literally don't have time.
Yeah, exactly.
And the law isn't set up for them to do anything otherwise, because the law, much of family law, Pi, and I know I told you this, it's very, and people are often shocked to hear this, I love to be able to give hard and fast answers. They seldom exist, because the law is very much geared toward the judge, whatever the judge wants. It's very mushy gushy gray. So very often we have situations where we have to kind of Okay, well, the judge could do this, or the judge could do that. I always tell my clients, think of the judge like Julius Caesar. Literally can do pretty much whatever he or she wants. So that doesn't always give a lot of guidance as far as hard and fast rules. But unfortunately, in the case of the example you're giving me, those were hard and fast rules, which is that the court is pretty cut and dry on some stuff and doesn't care about the whys and what actually happened.
Yeah.
They just don't care.
It makes sense from, it's one of those things where from the outside you go, that makes total sense. I mean, the law doesn't have time to go into your relationship to figure out who did what and to analyze and to, process. Nobody has the time for that. In addition to just imagining how much that would cost to try and put together an unbiased case from two perspectives, and then nobody has the time for that. That said, when you're in it, you desperately wish that was how it worked, because you just, it's a messy and nasty process. Now I got to ask.
Go ahead, Pi.
My next thing is, what are some of the most common reasons that you find for people getting divorced?
Yeah, that's one of the questions I get so often from different people. You'll be surprised at what I have to say, I think.
I'm going to jot these down.
Oh, I'm taking notes. I'm honored. Thank you. So kind. I feel so official. I would say about a third of the time, and I'm going to be blunt and then I'm going to get more mushy-gushy because that's just how I roll. About a third of the time, there's an extramarital affair. I'd say about a third of the time. Now, it's easy to point to. It feels clear cut. There was a judge who used to be on the bench that said Cinderella doesn't marry Adolf Hitler, meaning there's usually it takes two to tango. So
for sure.
Yes, perhaps party A might have had an affair, but that doesn't necessarily mean that party B didn't do other things that maybe contributed to overall unhappiness.
Well, Esther Perel had a great line on that, where she said basically, the person that cheats is responsible for the affair, but both people are responsible for the emotional pretext leading up to it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
100%. So, but it's easy to point to and it's concrete. So I'll say about a third of people, there is one or more extramarital affairs. And by the way, sometimes it's both sides going, in their respective camps. That happens. I would say 1/3 of the time, you're going to be surprised at this one. People never believe me with this one. A third of the time, it's that one or both parties are dissatisfied with the other one's parenting.
Wow.
Yeah, people don't believe me when I say that. And I might have said that a little bit cutesy or a little bit formally, and it's maybe I said it even without enough emotion to explain what I mean. But very, very frequently, I have parties coming to me who are very upset or it's like this. I thought he or she wanted to have kids, and I thought he or she was going to be I'm just going to be blunt, be a better dad or a better mom than he or she is. I'm super disappointed. I feel like I was sold a bill of goods. Literally, this is so common. It's as common as an affair, and maybe they're overlapping in some ways. I could probably do a study on that if I had time, which, by the way, I don't. But I'm really, really disillusioned with the way that he or she disciplines the kids, handles the kids, treats the kids. They're too loose. They're too strict. And it's usually a lot more emotional than the way I'm delivering it to you right now, because it's not my kids.
Sure.
But that's a really common one. At least I'll say this. That's what is reported to me. And by the way, Pi, I don't ever ask people. They tell me. I never say I never ask, because like we just talked about, the law doesn't care.
No, but I mean, when I came and sat down with you, I remember our first meeting was more a therapy session than it was a legal counsel. It was me laying on the table, what's going on. So I could see everybody is going to walk in and want to explain what's happening. You should just bill your first visit as counseling. Your first visit is just, this is your therapy.
And I'm happy to do it, and I'm happy to help, and I want to do anything I can to ensure that people feel heard, feel valued, because their story does matter, and they do matter. And your point is exactly right. Many times people will come into their first meeting with me and will divulge to me things they've never told anyone in their lives.
Yeah.
And I'm flattered and honored, and it's a privilege that people will entrust that information to me, and I take it very seriously. It's very much confidential. But yeah, so I would say issues relative to parenting are number two, about a third. So about a third of our affairs, about a third are parenting related discrepancies, if you will. And then I would say the remaining third are financial issues. I'm a female, so I can do this. I'm going to be a little bit gender stereotyped here as I speak, just very quickly. I have observed a trend, and maybe this will be maybe insightful for some of the listeners, or maybe some of them will send me hate mail, and I do apologize. I don't mean to upset anyone. I do find that there's a theme that I will see with heterosexual couples. I have same-sex couples as well, but with heterosexual couples, the gentleman, if I represent the gentleman in some of these cases, their perspective is, she doesn't contribute. She doesn't appreciate me. She doesn't care about how hard I'm working for the family. She wants to spend all the money and doesn't want to contribute to the family. She's smart, could get a job. She doesn't want to because of whatever reasons. She'd rather go shopping with her friends, whatever that is. Okay. And I feel neglected and uncared for in this relationship. Will affairs happen in that scenario? Frequently. And additionally, separate and apart from that, there is a strong tendency I see that the gentleman, I've seen it flipped with the genders too, but this is just common, is trying to express himself by providing and financially and otherwise, like, how many houses do you need? I already bought you a Maybach. Why? This attitude of like, I'm doing everything I can for you, and no matter what I do, she doesn't appreciate it. Then in those same scenarios, this is sort of a common theme I see when I deal with or represent the female in this scenario. The female is saying, he doesn't care about me. All he cares about is work. He's much more interested in talking to his friends than me. When I try to express my interests, he doesn't seem to care. All he wants to focus on is money. He's constantly badgering me about when I'm going to go back to work. He doesn't realize that I am going through menopause. I have breast cancer. I have raised 5 kids and I'm exhausted. Whatever it is, X, Y, and Z. He doesn't seem to care about my needs. I've asked him to go on vacation. He says we can't afford it. I've tried to propose therapy. He says we can't afford it. I'm trying to do all these things to help our relationship, and he doesn't want to even be involved. All he wants to focus on is money. So when I said about a third of the divorces I see are relative to financial issues, it's financial issues, but to your point from before about money as energy, which I think is a really, really great way to think about money, because energy can be a common denominator for dollars and effort and time, and you can quantify it and make it into the same common denominator. But the scenario I'm describing to you, those two, man and woman that I just described, they would probably say, yeah, we're getting a divorce because of we don't agree on finances, or they would probably caption it or title it, package it in a certain way. But really what it's actually, the actual issue is a lack of, and you could say a lot of things, but we only have so long on this podcast because I can talk all day. It's a lack of seeing eye to eye, and it's pride. This is my opinion. You can disagree, but this is the 14+ year family law attorney talking to you right now. It's pride. I am not willing to see past my perspective because maybe I'm a holy victim. Maybe I've taken on a victim narrative. Maybe I'm whatever it is, but I'm too focused on my own pain or perspective or whatever you want to call it to release me and come to your level and understand you. I believe there's ego and pride that's involved on both sides of that equation. So it's a lot more complicated than just financial issues. That's a symptom and an expression of the bigger issue of two people who maybe they can say we've grown apart, or maybe they were always apart, but that they're not true partners in that no one is willing to lay down their sword long enough to actually care about, see, and maybe even empathize with the other person's point of view. And it sounds weird to link that to pride or ego, but I definitely do.
No, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
I could definitely see it as, I also feel like, I sent you one of the early versions of the book.
Which I appreciate. Thank you. Super cool. Love it.
What would you say to, I genuinely feel like every one of the issues, the significant issues that we encounter in any relationship have to do with misaligned values. And it's not so much what people think values are. You come from a religious background, so you would understand this.
I do.
Most of us equate values to, are you going to church? Do you read your Bible? We equate values to senses of morality,
Correct.
of like, what is right and wrong. And if you're married, you don't cheat. And we think of those things as values, right? And in reality, the actual value is the underlying why that's driving it. But we don't equate that. So we think that everybody going to the same church and congregation shares similar values. And in my research and in writing the book, one of my lines is, here's what I can guarantee you, is that the people that are sitting next to you are far more likely to have differing values, than have similar values. That's what I can guarantee you. And the reason is that one person might be at church because their parents told them to go. They might be out of respect for their parents' beliefs and whatnot. Another person might go to church because it's their spouse. Another person might go to church because they genuinely want to learn and be spiritually, edified, whatever it might be. And another person goes to church because it makes them feel a little bit more connected socially. And another person goes because they feel guilty if they don't. Every one of those are the underlying values. And it dictates what the person actually does when they're doing the thing. See, people get angry at each other for how many times have parents gotten angry with their children, friends gotten upset with each other, or spouses. Spouses go, why aren't you paying attention in church? Why are you just on your phone? Well, going to church is not the value. It's why you're there. So if he's there because she wants him to be, then he's going to go there and then he's going to pay attention to other things while he's there. So it's these misaligned values. And when you talk about parenting differences, I go, well, yeah, because their values don't align. So the way that they teach and instruct their kids is going to be just a constant friction between the two of them.
Absolutely.
But did you read that concept in the book? I didn't know if you had a chance to look at it.
I started the book. It's so good. I haven't finished it yet, so I'm trying to remember if I got to that point. But I 100% agree. I think that's so right because I think part of the issue is, and this is just I'll be on a soapbox for 10 seconds and I'll jump right off. I do promise.
I love your soapboxes.
Oh gosh, you're like, here she goes.
Soapbox it up.
Buckle up, honey. I think in our Instagram soundbite rushing world,
yeah,
no one has the time or will give the time or make the time either with others or with themselves to really identify their values.
For sure.
Because who has the time? I've got to bill my hours. I've got to get the kids to school. I've got to do 50,000 errands. I've got to whatever. And there's no reward in our society for same. Our society rewards extremism. Mm-hmm. And this isn't political. I'm just saying, the best day in the world on Instagram. Our society rewards that. Our society rewards, the loudest mouth gets the attention. It's our world and rushing in our instant communication. There's great benefits to that, but I think what is lost very frequently is our ability, and I'm guilty. So this is not me preaching. This is me telling myself, our ability to step back and say, okay, we'll use your church an example. Mm-hmm. This is just an example. It could be applied to anything. Sure. Why am I going to church? Why am I doing this thing? Well, I can tell you, I'll give an example. There have been times where I've gone to church, COVID notwithstanding, mm-hmm. Right? Because I'm desperate for a miracle. Mm-hmm. That might sound kind of extraordinary, extreme, but where I'm like, I need to hear from God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is the best I can do. This is the way I'm gonna do it. So, Rick Warren or whoever's talking to me, please help me. Yeah. I'm coming expectantly, yeah. And I'm hoping that you say something that will be a magic symbol that God will, put a lightning bolt down and be like, yes, you're supposed to do this, or you're supposed to start a business, or you're supposed to right?
Yeah.
Right. But so often we don't stop and think about that. And it's that, I'm sorry to go back to the analogy, it's that seed in the dark. When you're in that dark time, when you're in a place where you say, how do I get out? I don't want to be here. This sucks. This hurts. This isn't where I'm supposed to be. Where I think sometimes we actually stop and say, why? What is my motivation? To your point, what is my value?
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes it's that hard time that we go through that pushes us to actually stop the Instagram, put down the phone, put down the distractions we're all very guilty of, and stop and say, my life matters. I'm important enough for me to spend 5 minutes in my own silence to think to myself, why am I starting fights? Why am I, whatever it is, why am I engaging in these behaviors? Why am I sticking with a toxic ex? Why am I, overspending? Why am I overeating? Whatever the thing might be. I think we owe it to ourselves to take a moment out of the distractions to develop that from time to time. So I love the fact that your book, in the context of relationships, seeks to examine the subject of values. And I 100% agree. I think that many couples in all three of the examples, the third, affairs, kids, and money / lack of connection that I gave a moment ago, I think 100% all of those examples are a misalignment of values associated with, I believe, or again, I'm not advocating for us to become Amish necessarily, but our modern culture providing an uphill battle for those of us who want to stop and be self-reflective.
For sure. The tough thing is that not only do you have to stop and be self-reflective, but you actually have to know what questions to ask. You have to know what to because once again, we're trained to think that these core values are things that are external, like they're your actions, but one person can pay child support going to your job, what you do. One father could pay child support because he's obligated by the law. One person could pay child support because he feels guilty if he doesn't. And another person could pay child support because he genuinely loves his children and wants them to be taken care of. Now, all three of those men are doing the exact same action. And we could say that it's women, but in most cases it's men. All three are doing the exact same thing.
Correct.
We cannot judge their core values by the action because they're all doing the same thing. But if I were to say, now, how does each one of these fathers behave in their children's lives, you could probably spell out exactly what they would be doing.
Absolutely.
The person paying it because they don't want to go to jail, what kind of father do you think they are?
Not so much.
Yeah.
Not so much of one.
Doing it out of guilt, what kind of father do you think they are?
They're taking their custody time. They're not really engaging. They're just doing it because they read it in the court order. So they're complying with the court order out of obligation, but they're not really wanting to engage. They're just doing it because they're supposed to.
1,000%. The person that actually pays it because they love their children and want to be provided for, what kind of father is that?
Right. That's the one who's, setting up tutoring, setting up extracurricular activities, and thinking up exciting things to do on Easter morning. They're the ones who are really engaged and sitting down with each child and having a conversation with them time to time, saying, you know what, sweetie, you're going through a challenge. Being a teenager is a challenging time. I want you to know no matter what happens, you have value. You are worthwhile. Even if your face breaks out, even if you get a bad grade, I love you and I'm always here for you. You can always come to me. That's that kind of father. So
it's interesting because when you spell out the actual driving value, you know exactly what that person looks like. And that's what it comes down to is first, you have to take the time to actually pause and be introspective. The first place that we start is understanding our own value.
Yes.
But you need to, step one, take the time.
100%.
Step two, ask the right questions. Step three, which people will really struggle with, is being brutally honest with yourself.
100%. Because of the ego
Yeah.
and the pride that I spoke of a moment ago.
Because how many people want to admit that they're going to church because their parents told them to, or because it's for some other reason, How many people want to admit why they're actually, paying child support to themselves? But if they don't do that, then they don't clearly understand what their motivating factors. And what I found from the research is that there's only 3 to 4 motivating factors for each person, by and large. So one of yours would be tangible difference. Like, you need to feel like you're making a tangible difference in the world around you. That I could apply to probably most of the things that you choose to do in your life.
Yeah, I guess. I never thought of it that way.
Well, in understanding that value, you could probably find a career of meaning and purpose in different areas.
Yeah, you're right. That's true.
Right?
That's definitely true.
Like law and specifically, the family law is for you. It's a medium. It's a tool to get to that end.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's so true. I never thought of that before.
So if you're with a person, if one of your values, and I'm not saying this is your husband, I'm just saying that if you're with a person, I can very much bet that your husband shares this value. Do you know how I know just from the things that you've said?
How do you know, Pi?
He's in the military.
My husband has incredible values that run circles around mine in terms of his desire for justice, caring for the underdog, wanting to preserve our nation's safety and freedom. He is the most he has the most amazing values of any person I've ever met. Truthfully, I'm not just making lip service. He's an incredibly devoted to family, incredibly loyal. That's probably the best word I would use to describe him. Incredibly loyal, very, very patriotic, and just a caring, good person who just loves other people.
Yeah,
100%. Way better than me. Way better than me.
a lot of people, they go into the military thinking that, their first 4 years in the military might be for whatever reason. I'll be willing to bet that the majority of people that stay are there because they want to make a difference. They want to bring about justice. They want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. So along the lines of your most important core value, it's shared between the two of you. Now, the way that conventional theory would put it is that you're a lawyer, he's in the military, this isn't going to work. What you need to do is find another lawyer. But let me tell you that, or let me ask you this.
God forbid.
But that is conventional thinking,
it.
right? What if I put you with a business lawyer who was very much motivated by the money, by the contracts? Just what would that life look like?
That's a great question. I don't think it would be a very fulfilling one. One of the wonderful things about my husband, John, is he's adventurous and he loves to, take risks and, in service of, charitable activities or just fun, loving the love of nature. We both love the outdoors. We love to travel and hike and do extreme, sports and things like that. So I think the description you just gave me, it feels like a very staid existence that probably wouldn't be focused on helping other people move forward in their own lives. And thus, I don't think that I would have aligned values just based on the very brief description you just made with such a person. I can't imagine. I don't even know what that would look like.
Well, it's exactly the relationship you described earlier, where you had one person at home who goes, like you can, if we take Lauren out of the picture and just say someone else that's in family law, someone else that's in business.
Sure.
And the business guy comes home and is, hun, we just got a $10 million award for this contract. I just got this, like, this is what, and then you go, that's great, honey. Like, I just helped, this family put their lives back together. And like, this girl's on her way to just starting a new life. And he's like, no, that's great and everything. That's awesome. And you're like, okay. That's the exact conversation that we're talking about.
You're right, Pi.
And the way that it syncs up.
You took my example and gave a concrete, illustration of what I was just describing. You're exactly right.
So it's those misaligned values that, and again, you go back to, like you said, most people don't stop long enough to understand their own, let alone understand the other person. And you can't really choose the right person and partner until you understand what your own values are. Then you seek to know their values. But the way that we're taught to create relationships, choose people that are in your same religion, choose people that are doing something similar in profession. And these are routes that are not only not successful, but they are more likely to be guaranteed that they're going to put you on the wrong track.
I agree with you. I think part of what we're talking about right now is, how do I say this correctly? Just because we've seen something be done in the past doesn't mean that it's right. And just because in the past, to your point, maybe society or parents or whoever will say, you need to, marry or marry someone, not have a non-marital cohabitation. No. Marry. Let's be clear, right? You need to marry someone with your same religion, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, background, whatever it might be. Okay. The problem is just because it was done before and it's familiar, doesn't mean that it's healthy or right. It just means that it's the same misery that we've known before. So let's just keep creating it because it's safer in our minds to be miserable in the same pattern that's been going on for generations. Because I guess, I guess our ancestors, they survived, right? Like they're alive, like our lineage has sustained, existence. Well, I don't want to just exist.
Yeah.
I don't want to just be matter that's on earth and then just kind of, dies at one point and then, whatever. That's not the life that I want. I want a life of more meaning than that. So that's fine. Same for couples. Great. Go for that. But if we keep doing what we do, If we keep doing what we're doing, we keep getting what we're getting. And just because we see a pattern doesn't mean it's a good pattern. It just means it's a known pattern.
Yeah. Well,
People would rather be miserable.
Like you said earlier, I mean, our time, our mental capacity, everything is limited, right? So in my belief, those shortcuts, those mental shortcuts of like marry within your socioeconomic status, your ethnicity, your religion, your, race, whatever each of these different pieces are, sometimes they can come from a place of malice, but I think more often than not, it's mental shortcuts that people think if you do those things, you will have aligned values. The problem is the majority of the time you don't.
Definitely not.
Those things do not dictate values.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important for each of us to be an individual and do this discovery on our own. And instead of being like, look, there is I can say it, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant wasp, or whatever, there's someone looking like me, whatever it is. This must be the proper person for me to marry because of these similarities of whatever it might be. We run into the place where, what about that person? Are you marrying? Do you love that person, or do you love the idea of that person? Do you love that person, or do you love what that person can give you? This is another thing I see a lot in my line of work, is
give me an example.
All day long. People who, from my perspective, again, I'm not in their house, but from my perspective, it's what I call a relationship of convenience. A relationship of convenience can look a lot of ways, but what it usually looks like is it looks like a transactional relationship. Maybe they look good in a picture, and she gives him something, he gives her something. You can fill in the blanks of what those somethings are if you wish. I can be graphic about it or not, but I'll choose not to. Whatever they have, there's an exchange of values of goods and services, if you will, and it's not really much deeper than that. As Lisa Turtle said on Saved by the Bell, it's about as deep as a Frisbee. So, right, that's a relationship right. It's as deep as a Frisbee. So, it's not really, there's not really much else there. And for some people, I guess maybe below the surface, there's just more surface, and that's what there is. And that's fine. But that's just not that's just not my life. I can't stand by and just live a surface level life. I'm not satisfied personally with that. I want to have a bigger impact, as we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And I think most of your listeners probably do too. But you're right. There's so many elements to this. And one that you mentioned earlier is the ability to sit there and look at yourself in the face and say, I have some work to do on myself. That marriage, that probably wasn't the best idea. But it's hard because it's so much easier to wallpaper over.
Yeah.
To use your house analogy, the crack in the wall than to actually fix it.
Well, and we wallpaper over in many ways. We wallpaper over by being the husband who's always working. We wallpaper over by getting way too into fitness. We wallpaper over by posting nonstop. This is one of the things that I've seen, is that the worse a relationship is getting, the more they post to Instagram and social media how great it is. We wallpaper over, and have you seen that too, by the way?
The lady doth protest too loudly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I think sometimes the insistence that, the Jennifer Lopez, I'm breaking up with A-Rod. Now I'm not breaking up with, everything's great. Here we are being photographed in the Dominican Republic. It's all good. There was no cheating. Yeah. Yay. Like, you're trying a little too hard. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
It becomes a very apparent sign that they're convincing themselves at that point. Like it's more for them than it is for anybody else. But we wallpaper in so many ways. It could be alcohol. It could be any number of things. But I did the same thing. For me, it was work. Like, it was the one area of my life that I felt like I could control.
Yes.
So I threw myself into it fully. And then when I wasn't at work, it was reading every possible book and going to counseling and trying to figure out what was broken. So yeah, we all tend to wallpaper, but it comes back to, like, I wrote the book from the perspective of what does a healthy relationship look like? That's the only question that I wanted to answer. What does it look like? Because asking yourself the right questions, knowing, it begins with such a basic thing. And this is what pisses me off so much about our younger education, our youth, right? I think knowing what a healthy friendship, what a healthy business partnership, what a healthy marriage, what a healthy family relationship, I think knowing what a healthy relationship looks like is a pretty critical component of your success and happiness in life.
Absolutely.
Is that something you would agree with?
I agree 100%. And when you don't have that modeled for you, like so many of us don't in our lives, it's sort of like we're in this room in this lovely studio and there's a blank wall. It's like I'm being asked to create a painting on a blank wall. Like I don't have, like, where do I even start?
Yeah.
Where do I don't even have the ingredients necessary to make this, beautiful work of art. I don't even know where to begin.
You're not even told what the paint is.
No.
You figure it out.
Figure it out. And you have no frame of reference.
But this one question, you're most of everything that I've had in my career has come through the people that I've known, whether it's impressing somebody in an interview or whether it's just somebody that I knew before the fact or my own business partnerships with Justin and Chris. It's always come through relationships. My happiness at home, dictated by relationships. Everything around me, my personal life, dictated by relationships. So from career to personal life, it's all relationships. Yet if I asked you the question, what does a healthy relationship look like? You have more experience in this than anybody. I mean, it's safe to say, right? Like 99.9% of people in this world have not seen as much as you have in the realm of what makes things work and what makes things fail.
I guess so. I don't often think about it that way, but yeah, I think you're right.
Okay. So can you answer that question? Because if you can't, how screwed are the rest of us?
We're all SOL.
Yeah. That was my thought, was like, how did we escape college without being able to answer one of the most pivotal questions in life?
I know.
And it's one of those questions that should have a relatively concrete answer. Like, it doesn't have to be a one-liner, but it could be like something that's easy enough to remember.
Or like able to be grasped by the human beings trying to have them.
Yeah. Well, so in your eyes, what does it, I'm so curious as to seeing what you've seen. My first question is, what do healthy relationships look like? My second question is, how have seeing what you've seen affected your own marriage? But let's start with question number one.
Sure. Gosh, it's hard. I want to give a concise and simple answer because I think that's what we all want to hear.
You don't have to.
Thank you, Pi. I appreciate that. I think for me, it's going to not be terribly dissimilar from some of the things we've already talked about. This is just me speaking. I think the ability to lay your own, I'll use the word ego, your own ego, could be pride, could be patterns, whatever your bag, it may be baggage, lay your own agenda aside and turn around, shift, change, move, reposition to be able to say, okay, these are all the things that I want, need, think I need. But I'm going to set that aside for a moment and I'm just going to focus on you. What do you need? What is it? It's a humility.
Yeah.
To maybe in the business world or in education, or we're taught to, lead with our strengths and be strong. And that's great. And I'm, confidence. It's not about, what I'm describing now isn't a lack of confidence. It's not a lack of a sense of self. It's not spinelessness. It's security in oneself. Here we go. It's security in oneself enough to say, I am one person, not all knowing, I'm not omniscient. I'm going to put my own agenda, ego, pride, needs, perceived needs aside, and I'm going to lay them down voluntarily. And I'm going to say, tell me what you're going through. Tell me what you're experiencing. Tell me how you're feeling. So you could say that's communication on a surface level is of course key to a healthy relationship. But I think it's communication without pretense. It's communication without ulterior motive, which is, I'm not saying I've mastered it. I'm just telling you the answer that I believe is empirically true. It's communication and a willingness to step into somebody else's reality without having to drive your own agenda.
Sure.
Like instead, not interrupting, not talking. No, what you really mean is letting them be them and just accepting it. Not that you necessarily agree with everything that's being said, but again, you have to kind of set aside those preconceived notions.
What I'm hearing is that it's having a desire to succeed in the relationship more than a desire to be right in
Yes.
a situation.
Yep. That's part of it.
Because you mentioned like setting certain things aside. I don't think you mean like self-care or self-needs or those kind of
Not
things.
in the slightest.
You mean like when we come to the table, our relationship and what we are has to be more important than me being right in this scenario, or me saying everything that I want to say, or whatever it might be.
Or me feeling like I won.
Yeah.
Or me feeling superior.
Sure.
Because that's the thing, and I have to be honest with you. Sometimes I see these relationships and I feel like, again, it's not and people are equal partnership. Yeah, that it's not equal. Like somebody thinks they're better than the other person. Somebody thinks they're smarter, faster, better, stronger, more attractive, more successful. And is that often tied to earnings? Often. Not always, often. So there has to be a willingness on both sides to say, I'm going to not focus on all these exterior markers and perceptions and like my own, maybe my own social inclusion, like my own needs. And I'm going to, not self-care, like I said, no, not at all.
Yes.
To be able to say, you and this relationship is going to come before all of that. Not that those things don't have a place, but that I'm willing to sacrifice certain things that I think I want or need it for the greater good of this relationship, because I care that much about you to do that. You're important enough to me for me to not have to be right now, for me to not have to be, the BMO, the big man on campus right now that I am maybe in my workplace or in my neighborhood or in my school. I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to put you first. There's something about that feels like the answer to me.
I agree. That actually ties to, so I wrote about this idea of, I'm trying to simplify the concept of attraction into a term that I call regard. The reason is because I find that attraction is very closely tied to, it's not only a platonic and romantic concept. We think of attraction, we think romantic, but in reality, it's both platonic and romantic in both ways.
I agree.
And the way that it's programmed, we think of it as being something physical, when in reality, attraction on both sides has to do with more. So I labeled the term regard. And regard is a mixture of respect, status, and attraction. But basically those three things. And respect is the ultimate form. So respect usually comes from similar values and feeling like we're on the same wavelength, or you're somebody that I admire. But what you just described, would that not be the lack of respect to the other person? Would it not be the lack of, like if I'm coming to the table with a sense of ego and a sense of I am right, or I need to be right, or I need to win this conversation, that usually comes from a standpoint of like, I don't respect you enough to like think that we're equal.
I agree. Yeah.
So when I wrote in regard, I marked it as the beginning of desire and the end of it. So most people will not create a relationship with somebody that they do not respect, or if they're in a relationship, they will not value it and maintain it unless there is that sense of regard there. Would that be a fair?
Yeah, I think that's true. I do. I do. And I think in that way, as we described earlier, while the birthplace or centrifuge of regard is not necessarily same religion, same ethnicity, same
Sure.
da, 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 da.
Sure.
I think it's more, it's less about those, I dare say, on some level, exterior things. And it's more about like a mutual, regard. I think I like the way you define regard. I agree with that. It's a mutual respect and admiration and appreciation also of the other person. Not, and this is key to me, not expecting them to be just like you.
For sure.
That's important. Because I think some people, like the description I was giving before with the stereotypical man and woman, each one thought that the other should have been more like them. Why? Why is one better than the other? They shouldn't be. Now, both probably need to make some adjustments into how they relate to each other. That's separate. But in terms of the core person, we don't have to all be the same.
No.
In fact, it's much better when we're not. We complement each other and have something to share as opposed to just being Sims or something like that.
That's an interesting topic because I do feel like people's largest core values, they either need to, you and your husband, you and your best friend, you either need to understand and value those things. I mean, the minimum is understanding them. Ideally, you share them. I do think that that is a critical piece. But once again, I think that what we describe as like who two people are and as being very different is actually, again, off. Like we think of being different as having different hobbies. We think of being different as like you're a lawyer, he's in the military. Those are the things that on the surface level, we have a very surface level view of like what it is to be different, right? But in reality, you and your husband, I would argue, are more similar in the areas that matter, in your values. That to me seems like something that is uncompromising, where you have to either come to the table with similar values or grow into those values. Either way, that has to be shared. But we think of, oh, she likes to do Pilates and I like to lift weights. We're two completely different people. I'm like, no, that's a hobby. That's an interest. That's not, that's not who you are. So going back to that question of regard, my next question for you is, have you ever felt attracted to somebody that you don't respect?
That's a good question. I'd have to think about that. Like I in terms of like a friendship, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Because that's where I feel many people come to the table of divorce, having lost regard for the other person. And no matter what you say, they're not going to be able to, because they don't have that baseline respect anymore. They don't have that it's gone. They can't look at the other person and see what you see. They can't see someone that's, those things.
I agree. That's right. I agree. Either they lost regard or they never had it.
Correct. The unfortunate thing about regard is that, attraction is something that you can feel instantly. The pieces of it was attraction, it was status, and it was respect. Attraction you can feel instantly. And you can respect someone's, physique from a platonic standpoint. You can also, feel that they're attractive from a romantic standpoint. But number two is status. That again is instant. This is our thing to think a celebrity is more attractive than they actually are, right? Like we tie their status to like their beauty. The third piece is respect. That comes with time. The hard part is most people don't realize that is missing until down the road. When and when they do get down the road, status and attraction no longer matters. What they look like doesn't matter. Their status doesn't matter. If you don't have a baseline respect, there is no attraction.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with your theory and kind of the way you're structuring it and parsing it. I think that's so true. And I think, like you've said, I think our society emphasizes certain surface level things because, again, they look good on an engagement photo. And they look, they can be, like they can be done up in a superficial way, but less glamorous, less emphasized because it's not marketable are people doing the work behind the scenes to actually say, okay, do I have respect for this person? Do I have regard for this person? How is this someone I want to spend time around? Because I feel like not to get on this tangent, I feel like so many times, and maybe to the point you made earlier, a lot of people have kids or have a family and then spend as much time as possible avoiding those things.
Yeah.
Running away from them, which again, that's something we go through and there's nothing right or wrong about it. I'm just saying, sometimes you kind of have to say like, do I even want to be around these people?
Yeah. Yeah. But in attempting to repair any relationship, that's the first thing that has to be fixed. The respect, the regard. If that's not fixed, you'll have no desire to do anything else.
I think that's true. And then you're just doing what I call making it work.
Yeah.
And if you're making it work, it's not working. It's called a breakup because it's broken.
Yeah.
It's over. Like if you have to make it work, it's not.
For sure.
And you can invest and try to make change on that, but that's up to everybody. And that's why divorce prevention coaching is so great, or why there are resources that people can utilize to, try and, address those issues when they haven't been in and of their own natural selves.
Yeah. My friend, I promised I would get you out of here at 1, and it is 1. We could talk all day.
We could.
If you're down, I would love to have you for a part 2 at some point in the future when your schedule's open. But in the meantime, I would love for our listeners to check you out. You literally, you did exactly what you promised on your website. You saved my life. You put me on a path that was so much better. I can't sing your praises enough. So anybody that's going through any of these types of things, reach out to Lauren. That is, I think I even have a review on your Yelp page.
You're so sweet. You do, Pi. You're so sweet. Thank you for that. You're so kind. I appreciate those nice words. And again, you're just such a delight and I love this podcast. You're doing such amazing things. I'm so glad you're able to reach people through this awesome medium. So yeah, no, if anyone ever has any questions or wants to reach out to me, feel free to, give me a call anytime. Should I spell my name or?
We're going to have everything in the show notes. So
perfect.
for everybody that is listening only, I would say go to laurenmulleelaw.com. If you are watching on the YouTube video, jump into the show notes. We'll have links to your website as well as your phone number. Do you want to give your phone number over air?
Yeah, sure. It's no problem. Yeah, totally. So yeah, if anyone wants to reach out to me, it's 949-570-0701. And yeah, my website is just www.lauren, Lauren, and then my last name is spelled Mullee, Mullee, 2 L's and 2 E's. And then the word law, LAW. So it's laurenmulleelaw.com, just like Pi said.
Awesome.
Call me anytime. I'm happy to help. And it's been such a pleasure being here, Pi. This is so fun.
I know. I can't wait to do this again.
Yeah, it'll be awesome.
So
Thank you.
Let's get you out of here into you got to go prep for court today, right?
Yeah. Some back-to-back calls and then court tomorrow. I'll have to check my calendar. I don't quite remember. Right. There's a lot going on. Thank you. No, this has been fun.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Pleasure.